I'll find the comments eventually. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in today for Book Talk. And I'm so excited to introduce you to my friend, Robin Lee Hatcher. And I have known Robin, oh my gosh, I think the first Kylibris that I went to, my daughter who's turning 13 was 2 months old. And so I'm pretty sure that's when we met. So that would have been 2008. That's
Wow.
a lot of books ago for both of us.
It is a long time ago.
Yeah, and what's fun is Robin and my other writing friend, Tamara Alexander, invited me to become part of their group blog, Inspired by Life and Fiction. And so that's one way that we've just really stayed connected. But I love the contemporary romance you've been writing lately, and the historical romance has always been excellent. So why don't you take a second and introduce yourself to everyone who's tuning in and joining us?
Okay. As she said, I'm Robin Lee Hatcher. I've been writing for 40 years.
Oh,
that's
goodness.
really
That's
shocking.
awesome.
Yeah. In March, I started my first novel in March of 1981. And it just seems like yesterday.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're up to 80, you're over 80 books. What's the official number? Or are you like me where you just, and I'm only at like 35, but I
Number
can't keep
84 comes out in July.
That is awesome. Oh my gosh, you're my hero.
Well, I do know authors that write a whole lot faster and have written a whole lot more, so I don't consider myself as fast as maybe I'd like to be, but it
You're writing big books though. You know, some of those people who've written over 100 books, they're love inspired or things like that, which is still amazing, but these are much more complex and richly layered books.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and I started with historical romances in the general market because there really wasn't a Christian fiction market at that time. There was Grace Livingston Hill, and that was about it. And so I sold in the general market. I did 30 historical romances, and God started working on me in the probably around book 20. He was really working on getting my life back in place as it should be in relationship to him, and also my writing where he wanted me to go. And so my first book for the Christian market wasn't just, although I initially pitched a historical romance, God had laid a different story on my heart, and I shared about it with the publisher. And so that became my first book for the Christian market, was The Forgiving Hour, and it was a contemporary story. And so, which was very scary because I'd never written a Christian book or a contemporary story.
Yeah.
And so I jumped in the fire. And so I've done over 50 books in the Christian market since I made that move in 1999, was when The Forgiving Hour was published.
Well, and you've been very successful. I mean, you've got award-winning books of all different levels, as well as most of them are bestsellers. So it's clear that this has been a great move for you. And it's so fun. I know you can't necessarily see all the comments, but Linda is saying hi, and Alan, and then Beth Vogt, our writing friend, is here, and Denise, and Chrissy, and Shirley. So it's so fun. Denise is like, I love your books, Robin. And Linda's just going, wow, that's a lot of books that you've written. And Alan wants to know, did you start writing when you were 5?
No, but all my family was readers, and I went to first grade to learn to read. And I realized that other people get taught when they're younger than that. So I don't know, when I get to heaven, I'll ask Mom, because I never asked her when she was on earth, why didn't you teach me? But it was probably because she was a widow, and she was going to college, and she was, raising 2 kids until she had to go to work. And so that's probably why. But I saw everybody reading, and so I went to school the first day of first grade to learn to read. They didn't teach me to read the first day, and I came home and told my mother I wasn't going to bother to go back, because if they didn't teach me to read, there was no point in going.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I've been in love with the written word since I was before I was 6, and that's all I wanted to do was learn to read. And so I've always been a storyteller. They called it lying. I began my storytelling career at the age of 10 when I told all my fifth grade friends that my mother was born in a covered wagon coming west. Well, she was 47, so she seemed as old as dirt, and so it seemed like it could be true. And
She could
but
have
you
been
can,
with the Laura Ingalls and her family or something, right?
but well, see where I live. You can go right out here in the desert where I live and see the ruts from the wagons. The
Yeah.
Oregon Trail went right through where I live, and so that fired my imagination, and so it just made sense. And my grandma was about 79, so she was born in 1881.
Okay.
So in my mind, it
Yep.
certainly seemed logical that she could have been.
That is so fun. And I mean, this is my office at home, and we've got your office behind you. And I was telling Robin earlier, I was running around the house looking for all of the books I have of Robin's, and this was the one I could find. How sweet it is. And it was just so funny because I have read probably every book you've written in the last 7 or 8 years, and some from before that. But I have so many bookshelves all over the house, and then some are on my Kindle that I was like, I know I have them. I know I've read them because they're wonderful. But you've got two books coming out in the next, like over the summer, and one's a book you're doing independently, and then you've got one coming out in July. So tell us a little more about what people can expect and what you've got coming next.
Okay, well, Even Forever is my independent published book, and that releases the 21st of this month, and it's a historical romance. It's been 7 years since I've written a historical romance that isn't dual time, that is just the history. And this is really kind of it's more of an old-fashioned kind of, to me,
Mhm.
from what I've been writing. And so when I actually had it on my computer and got to looking at it and didn't realize I even still had the file for it. And I got to looking at it and I thought, I just really like that concept. I think so. I rewrote it and revised it and sent it off to an independent editor and had the cover made. And so I'm excited about that. And it's available for pre-order now at a for ebook special price. And there'll be a paperback as well. And
That's
then my July release is published by HarperCollins Christian Publishing, Make You Feel My Love, and it's dual time. So it's the historical story is late 1800s, and then the contemporary, and it's two love stories set in the same small Idaho mountain town of Chickadee Creek, and a violin plays a little part. They did a beautiful cover.
Yeah, it is gorgeous.
It's just gorgeous, and I just really really am proud of this book. So I'll be eager for it. I think it's I should know. I think it's the 13th, but it's the middle of July on a Tuesday. So, but I think it's the 13th.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, one thing that I saw this last week in the Wall Street Journal, and you were telling me this has actually been going on for a long time, but Idaho has one of the largest, or is the number one hottest real estate market right now. And one of the reasons I was paying attention to that is where I live is number 5 or number 6, which is insane. But what do you think it is about Idaho that's pulling everybody into your haven?
Yeah, I think like I want to say we won't tell you all the good things because so many people are coming, and it is taxing. It is taxing the Boise area. It's grown so much, and so the infrastructure, and of course, I think all over the country, houses are selling way above asking price, and
And just really fast.
you put a sign in the yard, and it's gone 5 minutes later. The sign comes out, type of thing. So that's happening everywhere, it seems like. But Idaho, it's really an outdoor state. So if you love the outdoors, it's a good place because there's water skiing and snow skiing and horses are big, and we have more wilderness area than any of the lower 48 states. So if you like packing into the wilderness, there's that. My son-in-law is a whitewater rafter. He loves to raft the rivers, and we have some of the championship rivers in the world.
Oh, wow.
And if you love the ocean, you're only 8-hour drive away.
So I do, yeah, which is actually, that's a lot closer than we are. But one of the things I love about your books, at least the more recent ones, because I'm forgetting the title of the series, but the one with the World War II split time, which was wonderful. I really feel like we're kind of transported into Idaho. And so even though I haven't visited your state yet, the state really is like a character in your books. And so how do you keep it fresh? Because you're on book 84, 83 and 84 getting ready to come out. How do you keep coming up with fresh ideas and fresh, stories and characters? Or do you ever feel like that's a challenge, or is it just everywhere you look, you see what ifs and new story ideas?
Pretty much, I think coming up with a story idea isn't hard for most writers. It's making the story work that's hard.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's one of the reasons I love brainstorming with other writers, because I can toss out ideas one right after the other. You don't like it, fine, throw it away.
Yeah.
Here's another one. Because I don't have to make it work. I don't have to actually do it. So just come up with ideas. But for my own stories, I can really struggle. Oh no, I'll never have another new idea. As far as Idaho being a character, that's one of the things that I decided to do. I don't know, 20, 25 years ago, I really decided nobody really writes about Idaho. There are more Idaho authors now, and so it shows up a little more often, but for the most part, not very many people do. And so, and because I love my state so much, and we're so different from the Southwest to the Southeast to the Panhandle up near Canada, it's all very different and has its own flavor. And so that's one of the ways that it becomes a real character. And I have a real love for my state. And my aunt, my youngest of my mother's sisters, she was very ill as a baby. And my grandparents owned a lemon orchard in California near LA. And her illnesses basically cost them their orchard. And they moved to Idaho, where my grandfather's brother was. And I'm very sorry my aunt was sick, and my grandparents had to go through that hard time of losing their property. But it brought them to Idaho, and I feel very blessed that I got to grow up here. And
That's
so
awesome. Yeah, no, it's always interesting to see kind of how we get to the places we are and kind of the different steps. And then when you just love it and you can go, oh God, I'm grateful that I get to live here and not somewhere else. And Chrissy says The Forgiving Hour was an intense read. And so she really, really loved it. And Joy says that she loves the cover for Make You Feel My Love. And I think you and I both agree. It's,
yeah,
the HarperCollins team does a great job getting these covers that really capture the story in the book.
And what's really interesting is that the first cover they came up with was like a flashback to a romance cover from the 80s and 90s. It was not, and I part of that's a little bit my fault in terms of you complete the advanced marketing form.
Yeah.
And I often have to fill that out before I finish writing the book. And because I'm a seat of the pants writer, I have a real hard time, trying to give them the information they want. And so I really have to take some of the blame for that. But when I said, this just isn't right, and then I tried to explain, and I gave some more information, and then they came back with this, and it was just like, that's it.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah, no, they're so talented. And you're right. I mean, so many of the times they're sending you that, and I'll be like, I'm maybe halfway through writing the book, and it's so tricky to sit there and go, okay, what are going to be the key elements? And, uh, and yet, then when they come back with the cover and there's this great back and forth and you come up with the perfect one. And
Yeah.
there's nothing like that feeling when you're like, this is it.
Yeah.
This
I
is
did
it.
not know there was a violin when
Oh,
I completed the AMSI. And so, but of course, by the time we got that first cover, I was like, it's not right. And here now I could say, all of a sudden, this
yeah.
violin had become important.
Well, and what's
Um,
fun is you can glance at it, and because I've read quite a few of your books, I can go, oh, I bet this is a split time one because there's the black and white photo. And then,
mhm.
somehow the violin's going to tie the stories together. And so that's just fun because I know your books and your elements. And so Linda's saying covers are not supposed to be what you judge a book by, but your covers are awesome. And you have gotten some really amazing ones.
I have. I've had some really, really beautiful. I haven't had a cover to complain about since my general market career when bodices were
Yeah.
ripped off and
Well, that's a really great track record then, because that's been quite a while. So that's
yeah,
awesome.
it's been quite a while. Yeah.
So when you were talking about your grandparents having a lemon orchard in
Mhm.
California, is that why in You'll Think of Me there's apple orchards?
No, Lemon Orchard actually is played into one of my books, but I couldn't tell you right now which
Yeah.
one off the top of my head. Uh, no, the
Yeah.
apple orchard is, we have wonderful wineries outside of, probably about a half an hour outside of Boise on the South Slope. And so
Cool.
that was my fictional town that I created, is in that area. And so that's why I did the apple orchard there.
Yeah, well, it was such a fun storyline. I mean, it was just really a neat one. But as you were talking about the your grandparents and kind of your heritage, is like, oh, maybe there's a little connection there. So,
I've connected in lots of different ways. My grandmother actually was one of the first women elected to a public office in Idaho.
oh
I
wow,
couldn't tell you the year, but Idaho women were among the very first to get the right to vote. So when I wrote Catching
vote with
Katie
confidence. Oh, okay,
and
that
a
one.
vote of confidence, that's which I'm redoing. I got the rights back, so that's going to be the new
I love
cover of
that
that
cover.
one.
That's so fun. Yeah,
Yeah, but Catching Katie was the one that in fact, I dedicated it partly to my grandma, because she was a woman ahead of her time.
that
Uh,
is so fun.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So feel free to drop questions or comments, and Robin and I can talk forever, but we are happy to answer your questions and things as well. So you've got Make You Feel My Love in July, which is going to be the contemporary dual time, and then Even Forever this month, which is historical. And so, am I correct to assume that that one's set in Idaho and has maybe some
Yes.
cowboys in it?
Yes.
What time
So
period? Historical is such a wide range. It looks kind
um,
of like 1880s, maybe.
I'm trying to say 1885, but I've already been proofing. I'm also updating When Love Blooms, so that'll
Oh
be
my
the
gosh, that's
cover.
a gorgeous cover.
I did this cover.
Ah, Robin, it's
So
great.
yeah, I've proofed that one, and I'm starting to proof a vote of confidence, and of course I recently did the final proof on Even Forever, and so now they're all jumbled.
Yeah.
But 1885 to 1890 is the date of Even Forever, right in there somewhere.
Okay. Awesome. That's such a fun time period because, like, if you were in New York, it would be Gilded Age. You could do the whole, kind of Downton Abbey kind of feel like Jen Toronto does. But if you're in the West, you've got the trains are pretty well established now, and there's this technological revolution that's kind of happening. So, what was it like in Idaho at that point in time? And one of the reasons I asked that is my 10-year-old and I were listening to the Little House on the Prairie books as we were driving to school each morning. And it was so fun to go back through those, but also kind of eye opening to be reminded of, oh, wow, there were a lot of technological advances like, telegraphs and the trains, but there was still a lot that was very rural. I mean,
Mhm.
extremely rural. And like my grandma in Nebraska, they didn't have heating on the second floor into the 1930s. And so,
Right,
it's so easy to forget, especially as you get off of the coast, what it was really like.
right. Well, even my mom growing up in the depression and so forth. I mean, the 20s and 30s, exactly. They were in a farmhouse with the where the heat was in the kitchen,
Yeah. And
and
then you were doing the Laura Ingalls Wilder
and
thing.
yeah, and people didn't have, even though there were phones starting in the 1890s, um, rural places didn't have telephones. People didn't have phones in their homes. Even in the 40s, even during the war years, everybody didn't have a telephone. So the Idaho was, well, Idaho really came to be born because of the gold rush, and more gold came out of the Boise Basin than came out of either the 49er in California or the Klondike in Alaska.
Really?
It was the richest, absolutely, but nobody seems to know
Yeah.
that.
Well, yeah, 'cause I don't think Boise, I don't think Idaho and think Gold Rush or
No, so the gold rush is in the Boise Basin, which is to the north of me, and the silver was Silver City to the south of me in the Owyhees. And so that was happened in the 1862, and of course that was during the Civil War, and there were a lot of Confederates in the mining areas, and they tried to get a lot of the gold out of there and sneak it to the south.
oh
So
my
that was,
goodness.
I've written about that. I've written about that. Um, so so that was, and Idaho City was bigger than Portland, biggest city in the Northwest for during those years. Um, so then the capital was initially, and the territory was initially up closer to the Panhandle, and basically it was stolen and brought to Boise.
We
Boise
had
was,
that happen in Nebraska too. It was originally in Omaha, I think, and then got stolen like in the middle of the night and brought down to Lincoln.
yeah, that kind of thing.
And isn't it crazy? It always makes me think about like the Indianapolis Colts when they snuck out of Baltimore too.
Yeah,
But what
yeah,
is it with this? We're just gonna move everything in the middle of the night, and who cares
yeah.
what the
Just it
capital is?
little bit further than between Omaha and Lincoln. They brought it a little bit further, but that kind of thing.
Oh
Boise was established. Boise was just a supply place because it's in the valley.
okay.
It was a supply place for the mining to the north and the south, and but it's built along. This is where the sheep eater Indians and the Shoshone
Oh,
tribes were, and actually the sheep eater were probably a little bit further north of here, but because it's in the valley and the river is here, they would move through, and so that's Boise was a supply place, and eventually the railroad came, and Boise was the capital and kept growing, and so um,
cool.
Boise wasn't very big even as when I graduated from high school. It was 25,000, no 50,000, excuse me, 50,000,
Oh, it's grown
25,000
a
when my
lot.
mom did.
Yeah.
So, and now the greater Boise area is probably 650,000 for the greater Boise area, not just the city. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's
That's a
in
lot
my
of change.
lifetime, that's been quite a growth to
Yeah,
see.
no kidding. Wow. So, one of the ways that we also know each other and kind of work together is inspired by life and fiction. And so, it's this blog that you came up with. And it's such a fun place because we've got all these different authors. I think there's
There's
12 or
10.
13 of, is it 10 of us? I'm like, there's a
Mhm.
lot of us on there.
Well, 11 counting me. I do the bonus days now, so there's 11.
And it's such a great way for readers to interact with authors and for us to kind of peel back and talk about whatever we want to. How did what's your favorite way to connect with readers?
Oh, any connection with readers is fun as far as I'm concerned. Email. I love to see them in person. That seems like a long time ago. I'm
Yeah.
not real fond of book signings, unless it's at something where the readers actually are there. But just in a bookstore, nobody really advertises, and then it's just like the luck of whoever happens to show up kind of thing. So, but at events, that's really fun because you can actually interact with people. I love Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, not so much. You don't get quite as much feedback, or at least I don't. But then I'm not real steady in posting to Instagram, and you have to be
Yeah.
intentional.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And each one of those is different. And there's different
Mhm.
types of interactions. So, for everyone who's discovering you for the first time, which book do you recommend? I'm going to guess Make You Feel My Love if you like contemporary or split time, and Even Forever if you love contemporary or historical. Or is there another one
Um,
that you like? Oh, here's a great one if you want to get a feel for my books.
oh, that's that's like asking me about my favorite child. It
Yeah, I was
really
just
is. So
thinking
it's
that.
hard.
Yeah,
So
you love them
I
all.
often think, like one of the things I think is like, what are the books that have had the most almost a ministry
Mhm.
to them? Would be like The Forgiving Hour. I have ministered to so many women in pain because of an unfaithful husband. Um, Ribbon of Years was born out of the Columbine tragedy, and it's not about a school shooting, but it caused me to. I remember watching the parents of that fallen girl that was
Mhm.
a Christian and refused to deny God, and he killed her. And I watched them on TV, and I thought, how do they do this? How do they show their faith in the midst of that tragedy? And that led me to the question of, what does it mean to walk by faith? And then I thought about my mom, who had so many tragedies in her life. My dad was killed in a plane crash when I was 4 months old. She raised they'd been married just less than 3 years,
Oh,
just enough time to
wow.
have 2 kids. And she raised us alone. And the impact she had on me, what she showed me as a woman of faith. And so that became Ribbon of Years. And so I love
Wow.
that story because it was inspired by my mom. And so
Yeah.
every time somebody writes me, I just had somebody write me uh, a week ago to say, when I read that book, I felt God with me with every page I
Oh,
read.
that's awesome.
And I just,
Did you get that?
and the book is 20 years old, so that it can
Yeah.
still do that. So those kind of things, when you get that kind of interaction, it makes you love those books. But I still don't necessarily say they're favorites, because every book was written for a reason.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just want to write a book to tell a fun story. Catching
Mhm.
Katie is just fun. If you want a lighthearted, you want to laugh. Um, she's a suffragette with a car she calls the Susan B. And she's, I always saw her as a little dust devil going down the street, and the hero was the guy who had to come along cleaning up the messes she left.
Oh, that's
And
so fun.
so I think, that's the kind of, I have to go through those kind of things to say. So it just depends on the kind of fiction you like. If you like issues driven fiction, like Beyond the Shadows, it's about alcoholism in a Christian home,
Yeah.
which of course is a story I've lived. And so that um, that is powerful in its way, but it's not everybody's cup of tea.
Yeah.
So I actually have written across a pretty broad spectrum.
Well, when you've written 84 books, that's going to happen. There's just, and there's, I think one of the powers of fiction is that we have the ability to deal with those types of issues. Because, I think about the books I've written for HarperCollins, where, it was juvenile immigration issues, and then it was domestic violence, and, you know, children being abused, or how do we find truth in a fake news world, but they're wrapped inside a story. And Lethal Intent,
Mhm.
with we've got medical research and ethics and legal issues and all of that, but you can still have fun, and you can deal with these issues inside of a story that it can be really hard to interact with when it's nonfiction, or it's kind of in your face. And so I think that's one of the powers of story is we can
Mhm.
deal with these deep issues of faith or kind of questions and issues that like alcoholism that are real and that people are living with all the time. And you're
Mhm.
just masterful at
Yeah.
doing that with characters in a setting that we just come to really care about and makes it possible to go places we might not go otherwise. And
And,
Shirley, thanks.
the forgiving hour, my first husband had 3 extramarital affairs before the marriage completely failed. And the lessons that comes out of the forgiving hour are the lessons that I learned. Some
Yeah,
of them almost word for word, although the story was still different. But the power of fiction is that if your neighbor, if her husband has been
yeah,
unfaithful and she's in pain, and you take her a nonfiction book of 10 steps you can take to forgive your unfaithful husband, she's not going to pick it up. I've been there. I know she's not going
yeah,
to pick it up. I
exactly.
don't, but you can take a novel and say, this is amazing. You should read it.
Yeah,
And they minister to people in ways that
absolutely.
they open doors
Yes.
and allow people to express their emotions that otherwise they just want to keep tight inside them.
Absolutely. And I think that, I mean, that is a key because when we care for people and we see them going through something, it's so easy to want to go, here's the book that will fix you. And
Mhm.
that's not what people need. It's not what they want.
Mm-mm.
But with a novel, we can show here's what healing might look like. Here's what
Mhm.
the path of redemption could be, but it's not preachy if it's done well. And it's done in a way that we can have a little distance. And when we're in the middle of a crisis, we don't need someone in our face going, here are, like you said, the 10 steps to do this or
Mhm.
do that. There's a place for those. There's a place when God will get you to a point where you're like, okay, now I'm ready to get
Mhm.
out of this pit. I'm ready to know, okay, how do I move forward? But fiction can be that bridge to help people even know that hope is possible. And
Mhm.
so, and you do that so, so well. So, thank you so much for being with me tonight. It's always so fun to get to see you and hear about your writing and your heart. Is there anything you would like to tell people as we wrap up?
Oh, I don't really know what to say other than I have finished another book that'll come out in June of 2022. It's another split time. Um, so I can hardly wait to share that one, but it's way too soon because it
Yeah,
hasn't even gone through revision. So who knows what it will be like when revisions are done.
isn't that the
um,
truth?
so anyway, I'm staying as busy writing the stories as I can be, and so I just say visit my website and sign up for my blog and my newsletter so that you can keep up to date with what's coming. Oh,
Absolutely.
I
And
should say one thing. My
yeah.
birthday is Monday the 10th, and here in Hearts Crossing, novella collection is going to be free
Oh,
for the Kindle on the 10th.
oh, that's great. You're giving the birthday gifts.
Yes.
That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. There are lots of comments about how people enjoyed this chat. So thank you for making the time to be with us tonight. And really appreciate it. Hope you all have a great night. Be sure to check back in because I've got all of the book talks through July posted as events. So you can see I've got some amazing authors like Robin who are coming, including Rachel Halk with her new release, Lynn Austin, Karen Whitmire, Lynn Blackburn, Natalie Walters, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So definitely be sure to check back, but you can see all of those in the event list here on my Facebook page. Thank you so much for joining us, Robin, and I hope you have a great launch for both of those books. They sound fantastic.
Thanks so much, Cara. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.